a biblical perspective on life, culture, and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
One of the challenges of being a parent is that no one really teaches you how to be a parent, and suddenly you find yourself with a child, be it a son or a daughter, and you have to try and figure it out on that journey. And sometimes it's not as easy as we once thought it was. Well, today it's our great pleasure to welcome a man called Des Kennedy. He's from Momentum Australia, which has a website, momentumaustralia.org, and he focuses on men's health and men's well-being. And today we're going to talk about fathers and sons with Des Kennedy. Des, welcome.
It's great to be here. And what a great topic, fathers and sons. I have 3 boys. I've got grandsons as well. And, you can do it well, you can do it badly, but yeah, let's have the conversation.
Well, it's true, because making the baby is kind of fun, isn't it? And it kind of comes naturally. Well, it was for me. Yeah. And that seems to come naturally, Yeah. It's just, you dream about that as a teenage boy. We were talking about that earlier before too, weren't we? And so the making the baby part is easy. And then the baby comes along, and, for the first few years, you can kind of nail it, can't you? Having a child, you can sort of either have a routine or have no routine, and you sort of change the nappy and you feed them, and they're kind of easily pleased, aren't they? But as that child grows, things get a bit harder, don't they?
They do. I remember whenever my first son was born, I was only 20, my first son was born, and I remember looking at this baby in a pram and said, what on earth do I know about this child and how this child needs to be brought up? I had no idea. And you're absolutely right. If you learn with your children, rather than the opposite. And so, it's a growing experience, it's a learning experience, but you get out what you put in, right? It's the same for fathers and children, boys and girls. If you invest in them and teach them the values. I think it was a Catholic church that said, give me a child until he's 6 and I'll have him for life. Yep. And that's true of parents and children. It's exactly the same thing. Those first 6 years, we sometimes think that, that's the easy part, and it gets more difficult and we have to put more effort in later. And we probably do. But those first 6 years are so impressionable, are so valuable in terms of instilling values and things that are important for our children.
Yeah, I think psychologists call it the formative years.
Yes, that's right.
And I'm no psychologist, but I know one that is. And so I think children, for those first few years, they're like sponges. They just absorb everything. And that's not just the things we say. It's the things we do. It's the way we do them. It's the attention we give them, the time we give them. And I think children can sense love as well.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not even just what we say to kids, but I think people with a healthy self-image, for example, you'll find they're often loved by their parents at a young age for years, and they knew they were loved.
Yeah, it's true. And you can love your children, and that's really, really cool. But there's much more to it than that. For example, I can remember my dad was wonderful. I had a brilliant dad, but there was one area that he had a weakness, and that was he would come home on a Saturday night after closing his shoe shops, and he'd come home and I'd say, Dad, can you kick a football with me? And never would he kick a football with me. That hurt me. There's a thing called parental wounding, and parental wounding are things that our parents, male and female, mum and dad, do to children that they don't even think about, that cause wounds that can last a lifetime. And so if you don't resolve those things right early on in your relationship with your own dad, or a father-son, if you don't resolve those issues, they fester and they grow and they're exaggerated, and they really are caustic in your world.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about from your dad's perspective, he's obviously tired, and he was obviously thinking, I'm providing for my family. I love my son. I'm providing him with food on the table, a house to live in. I'm giving him everything I can. I'm exhausted. I don't want to kick a football right now. But in his mind, he probably thinks, but he just loved you so much anyway. It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
But from you, the son, that really hurt you, because you were looking forward to it, and you just wanted Dad to just have that time with you. Yeah.
Even if he'd taken 5 minutes and kicked the football, I would have been delighted, right? But that applies to everything in our world. I was a bad dad in that sense, that I never spent time with my kids. Because I was in the corporate world, and that's the way it was. I was flying and doing all sorts of stuff. But my kids, God bless them, I'd fly in from London or wherever I was, and their little faces would be at the airport waiting for me. And that just made my life, It's just the fact that they were so excited, even though I wasn't a good dad, they were still excited to see me. Maybe it was because I had lollies for them. Maybe that's what I forgot that point.
All the candy from overseas.
Yeah, that's right.
But so, you say that you weren't a good dad, and I don't know if that's true or not. I'm guessing you were actually probably better than you thought you were. But this obviously has inspired you to really want to focus on this whole father-son area.
Yeah.
Tell me what your focus is when you talk about fathers and sons.
Well, it's about relationship. As with everything, it's about relationship. Get to understand, have conversations that are meaningful with your children. Talk about the things that they were going to face as growing children, and just spend lots of time with them. Go fishing, go to the movies, do things that the kids want to do, because that just creates a bond that'll never be broken. There's an organisation that is in Queensland that's called Fathering Adventures. And Fathering Adventures is amazing because whether you're Christian or not, you can actually take your son and your daughter, and you go away for a weekend. And there's a structure to that bond that's created between a father and a son, or a father and a daughter, and it's just amazing. It totally rebuilds the relationships that will stand for a lifetime.
Say that organisation again. What's it called?
Fathering Adventures.
Fathering Adventures.
Yeah.
And they've obviously got a website. I'm going to check that out myself.
It's amazing. It really is. And it's a bit like Rites of Passage. You've heard of Rites of Passage. And it's a bit like that, but with a son and a... it's really back to the old days. Whenever, a father would go off hunting, and then he'd take a son with him, and he'd teach him how to fire an arrow or do whatever it is, fire a shotgun or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so that bond would be there forever.
Yeah.
And so, a young kid who's taught to fire a bow and arrow, with his dad, and maybe kill their first deer or whatever it looks like, right?
Yeah.
In your world, those things are priceless.
Yeah.
Absolutely priceless.
You're actually right, because you're taking me back to my childhood. My dad was a farmer, and we eventually sold the farm and moved to Sydney. I grew up on the beach, but I remember my dad taking me and teaching me how to shoot a rifle. And looking back, it was a special time.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you say, well, he's just teaching me how to shoot a gun. What's the big deal? But because he was a farmer and because he hunted, and I remember he'd take me on these times where the local farmers would get together and shoot wild pigs because the pigs are causing problems. And I remember standing there outside the car with my little plastic gun. I must have been 5, and him and the other farmers had their real guns, and they were shooting these pigs. And then for him to teach me how to shoot a gun when I was a little bit older than that, it actually meant a lot to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is amazing. And it doesn't have to be that. It could be going for a bike ride. It could be going on a scooter. It could be anything, going to the local pool and having a swim together, having a barbecue and letting your son cook the barbecue. Dads always want to cook the barbecue, but get your son up beside you, show him what you're doing, let him do it. If he makes a mistake, who cares? But, he's learning and he's growing and he's developing his relationship with his dad that he'll rely on all his life.
Yeah, and it's just that human touch, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
That human interaction, that human relationship. And like I said, and it's so much more special when it's dad, isn't it? There's something about dad, isn't there?
And, we need to think about the dads who don't have access to their kids. My heart goes out to them. I hear from many men who, through breaking down of relationships, it can turn nasty. They don't have access. They're paying, lots of money and maintenance and all that sort of stuff, but then they don't have access to their kids, and that's heartbreaking. And it destroys men who don't have that access to the kids. So, if you're in that situation, there's plenty of there's an organization called Dads in Distress, and they help men through not only relationship with their kids, but also how to put separation plans together so you have proper access with your kids. So there's lots of help organizations out there.
I want to repeat that one. It's Dads in Distress.
Yeah.
And that's Australia-wide, so they'd have a website as well, Dads in Distress, right. and you can get resources and get help.
Yeah.
Which is great. That's a great tip.
Yeah, so guys who are on their own struggle kids, I mean, that can lead to all sorts of conflict for men. not having access to the kids. They love their kids. They want to see their kids. They want to be part of their kids growing up. And sometimes, there's a distance between them for whatever reason. My heart goes out to them too. But if you've got your kids with you, please, there's nothing more important than your bond with your kids.
Yeah. And look, I'm going to share a story. You just remind me of a story. This guy from Ecuador, I know, he said growing up, his dad made some fairly poor choices in the marriage, involving another woman. And so the mum left him and took the kids with her. And the kids didn't have any access to their dad. Yeah. But you know what, my friend, who's now an adult, said that dad just constantly sent text messages of encouragement and love and support. And I don't even think they physically saw each other for a few years because I don't think the mum really wanted them to. But now this guy's in his early 20s and he looks back on that and he's so glad that his dad kept sending those loving text messages, and he probably didn't even reply to a lot of them, he said. But it still did something to him. And I want to encourage all the dads out there now that even if you can't physically see your kids, if you have access even just to a text message, and whether you get a response or not, just show some love by a text, phone call if you can, just whatever you can, because all these things have an impact on our kids, don't they?
Absolutely. And you'll never know the impact on that kid's life. Never know. Yeah. So, because kids learn from the way they're taught, right? And so if you're a great dad for your kids, they'll be a good dad for their kids by default.
Yeah. So when you say you weren't a very good dad, I mean, I'm a bit skeptical about that statement, but you say you weren't. When did you realize you weren't a very good dad?
I think I probably always realized it, but I go back to the point about my identity. My identity was in who I was. Des Kennedy was head of technology at Qantas or NRMA. I was, the guy who signed contracts. I, was flying around the world doing all the fancy stuff. I'd come back and, I didn't go to sporting events and I wasn't there for when they got an award, or I didn't go to the school concerts and all those things. So, I mean, God has blessed me in that I have a good relationship with my 3 boys now. They're growing up and they've got their own kids. And hopefully they do a better job than I did. So, yeah.
Do you remember that old Cat Stevens song that's all about that? It's at the beginning of the song that the son's asking the dad to be with him, and I can't remember the exact lyrics.
Yeah, no.
And the dad's always too busy.
Yeah.
And then when they get older, the dad's old and he wants to see the son, and he's like, "Oh yeah, another day, Dad. I'm just a bit busy." Do you remember that song?
I do remember that
Cat
song.
in the Cradle, I think it's called.
Yeah, that's right. Oh.
It actually resonates, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's painful. That's painful. I can relate to that totally. It's a tough thing.
Yeah.
So you just encourage dads, be a good dad. Take time. Have fun with your kids. Roll around the floor with them. Have fun. Keep them grounded, but also help them with their faith journey. Help them understand the importance of Scripture, the importance of reading the Bible, the importance of praying together. And praying as a family is a huge, huge thing in kids' lives. And so, you encourage all dads and mums to do the same thing.
Yeah. So I guess to summarize, what I'm hearing from you, Des, is teach your kids what you know. Whether it's barbecuing, fishing, driving a car, hunting, camping, playing sport, working, just teach them what you know, because it's special for your child to be taught by dad what you do know in life.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Des Kennedy, as always, it's been such a pleasure hearing from you. These interviews always go way too quick for me because I just know there's more. But I want to encourage our listeners, if you're feeling the same thing as me, that you know there's more, go to momentumaustralia.org. That's momentumaustralia.org. Through that, you can access Des's radio programs, his podcast, which goes to over 60 nations, his YouTube channel, and many other resources as well. And Des, I want to thank you again for joining us on 2020 today. And what is your final thought today?
Oh, look, it's just be a good dad, be a good mum. Put the effort in. The rewards you will get from doing it may not be seen when they're 16 or when they're 20, but more than likely it'll be seen when they become a parent themselves. And those values and those things that you've instilled into your kids, you can see them being played out with their kids. So it's generational in that sense. So yeah.
Des, thank you so much for joining us on 2020 today.
That's really cool. It's lovely to be here. And I just encourage all your male listeners, just seek help if you need help. We have a care line, 1-800-000-MEN. Very easy to remember. God really bless us.
Say
for
that again, Des. 1-800
1-800-000 men.
000 men. What a great name. How'd you get that number? That's the
yes,
best number
exactly.
ever.
1-800-000-636. And also we have YouTube. So we're also on YouTube. So we take a lot of our older videos, audios, and we've converted them to the video.
Yeah.
And so they're now on, if you search for Momentum for Men on YouTube, you'll see the videos there. There's about 10 of them up already. So
And there's a link on your website to your YouTube
link on the
page.
website, absolutely.
So I would encourage everyone to go to your webpage
Yeah.
and through there get your podcast link, your YouTube link. And Des, honestly, it's a great privilege to talk to you.
great.
Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.